Hello, good evening, good morning. Welcome back to season two of the Four Direction. I'm glad to be back with you again. Continue on our inspiring episode and show. And today we're going to talk about poetry in general, poetry, diplomacy, and how writing can transform other people's life and the process of writing itself and immigration, how it can bring the best out of other people's talents. I'm joined by my friend here, Andran Amirthanayagam. He's a poet, he's a writer, he writes poet and he's also a diplomat. Welcome, Andran.
Good morning. Good morning, Mary. Lovely to see you and to have a chance to talk about these
Thank you,
passions of.
thank you so much for giving us for your time. First, let me know why poetry. Why did you choose to write poetry?
Well, I grew up with poetry. My father was a poet, and he was a diplomat as well. And I have a great uncle who was a poet and an editor of the poetry magazine Poetry London, which he founded in 1939 in London, just before the war. And that was the only poetry magazine published during the war. And under the Blitz and in that very dark time, he was able to get poetry out and distributed every month. And he published the greatest young poets and painters of the day. Anyway, it was a service um, during a very dark time. And poetry is a kind of service industry. It serves the soul and the heart. It brings people together. Writing it releases endorphins. One feels better writing a poem, even on the darkest of subjects. So it's a release. There's a healing, a kind of catharsis that happens when one writes a poem. And so I've been passionate about poetry for a long time. I started writing poetry when I was a teenager, about 14 years old. But I think I had the inklings of poetry as a way of life from before then, even before then, yeah. And and then diplomacy, which is the career that I chose later on in my life, was just another manifestation of the same desire.
How does your career in diplomacy also related to poetry? Become a
Well, I
writer?
mean, that's right. I mean, yeah, I was anticipating your question. I mean, diplomacy is about bridge building, making bridges between communities, between people, between countries. And on that bridge, there's a lot of traffic, a lot of exchange. And you need bridges to connect. Otherwise, we'll live in isolated silos and be bereft and lacking for the lack of contact. So you need and diplomacy. When you build that bridge, you build it to make peace, to heal differences, to find common ground between yourself and your opposing partner. I mean, the notion of partnership is important, I think, to diplomacy. You are writing, I mean, uh, you're writing a démarche, you're sending it across to your opponent. If you go,
Where do you see yourself better in diplomacy or writing poetry?
I don't separate the two. For me, the two careers have gone side by side, hand in hand. I mean, I won't be a diplomat forever. I'll be a poet until I disappear from the planet. So, in that sense, that's simply a question of practical. One can't. The diplomacy is a sort of service to a state, a community, a people. But I think the role of the poet is also like that. I mean, like a priest administers a flock, administers a community of believers. Well, a poet administers a community of like-minded believers in the transforming power and beauty of art. When you're writing poems, you're writing a kind of word music, and music, is the window to the soul, right? I mean, it's so poems liberate places that are very hard to reach inside of oneself. And ultimately, you feel part of a larger community when you write the poem. You might write it in silence or in solitude, but when you share the poem, it's like that diplomatic demarche. You're crossing over, you're making a bridge between yourself and the world, the reader, the listener, and you're crossing over that bridge with your poem. So the two careers go hand in hand for me. But if I have to pick one that I will be doing until I've gone on, that will be poetry.
Oh, great to know that. So your first book in 1994, you have won the Peterson Poetry Prize. Uh, Take you before that. What is your early inspiration for writing? How the environment affects your writing process? Especially
Well,
you're an immigrant person, you move to different countries
right,
and
right.
also experience different experience.
I mean, that first book, The Elephants of Reckoning, the poet and critic and translator A.K. Ramanujan called it a welcome addition to the poetry of migration. And that phrase has stayed with me for a long time, the poetry of migration, which I guess I've been writing for a long time. But I also now think of it as the poetry of disappearance. You know, the things that have gone, that cannot be retrieved, they can never come back, but you write them down and they live again in your words, in the words on the page, in the memories evoked by those words. So poetry is about loss and staunching the flow of the blood, stopping it, you know, and healing. So, but you need the poem to wake, to both acknowledge what is gone, to conjure it up in images, and to move on. Because moving on is the only rule, really. We're always walking ahead, and we're always walking, we're always moving.
So, what is the
There's a
first image that like stick in your head from early childhood? You saw it, and then you decided, "I'm going to transfer it into writing."
That's a very interesting question. I'm not, you know, the first image that comes to mind is a huge rat that was crawling across in the backyard once when I was a kid, and then a cobra that was about to bite when I was a baby crawling in the grass. But then I think of those, but then I also think of the elephant, that elephant that we came across when I was a kid, and it was about to charge our jeep, and then somebody with us, the mahout, spoke some words in the language that the elephant understood, and the elephant stopped its charge. So I think of all these wild experiences with danger, with the possibility of losing your life, and they marked me. But I did not lose my life, and the elephant stopped its charge. And then I realized and learned later that elephants are pacific animals, and they charge when hurt, when isolated. So then I started to learn about how we contribute to the traumas of others. And we cause those traumas by waging wars and betraying and causing harm to others. So for me, when I understood these things about human life, I started to write about them with the goal of liberating myself and any readers from the harm of these terrible impulses in human beings. We can be, as the poet once wrote, Eliot once wrote, I murder and create at the same time. So you have the killing and the creation at the same time. And that's the sort of contradiction in which we live. We make war and we make peace. We plant a tree and then we chop it down, depending where we are on the planet. there seems to be a constant seesaw back and forth. So how do we stop that? How do we work out this contradiction so that we can actually advance as a human race, and advance the fate of all the species that live on this planet? Uh, and diplomacy and poetry, I think, are necessary for that process of finding a way to heal and a way out of the labyrinth
So
in which we
just
live.
you also talk about the healing and transforming feeling. Talk to me about the day that in your life, for example, you wake up, you are not feeling good emotionally, and then but you were trying to write. How does that day look like? And in another way, can we describe poetry as a therapy
I agree with
or
all.
a
Yes,
healing process?
yes. I think poetry is therapeutic, and it does help you to heal. And you can wake up in a terrible state in the morning. Let's say maybe you have not slept at all, and you're quite groggy, but you still have to somehow get up and go on with your day. And if you can find a way to walk, I would say walk, walk in nature. And then if you can find a way to write, I think that would, writing is a kind of walking. It's a physical exercise, a mental exercise, a healing exercise. So walk yourself on the page, writing. And I do that often. This morning I wrote a small poem in Spanish, um, because I wanted to walk and heal at the same time. And I also had an obligation because there's a newspaper. Once a week, I publish a poem there online in Spanish. And so I had an obligation to produce something to send. And I haven't sent it yet, but I will later today. So, yeah, so there are different motivations to write. But I think just the healing is you can't deny that
Mhm.
is the therapy. The therapy is motivation enough.
So you the founder of U.S. Mexico Fund for Culture and MacDowell Colony. Just wondering about that. Also, part of the work you are doing to connect
Well,
culture. You are a person who
yeah. Let me clarify. U.S. Mexico Fund for Culture and the MacDowell Colony were institutions that gave me funding, that gave me
for the
fellowships. Yeah, yeah,
the fellowship. Sorry,
right,
earlier.
right.
Yeah, just I'm trying to wonder because you're a person who grow up in different culture and in different environment. How does this kind of fellowship help you to practice the experience and the knowledge that they have? And what is your advice also for people who were looking, especially immigrant people who are looking for different writing fellowship?
My advice is first of all to read as much as you can in your field, and then write as much as you can, and hone your art. You know, develop it and share it with others. Develop a community of people who look at your work, and they themselves might be writing, and you exchange work. So you get it to the level where it is ready to send to magazines, to try and publish the poems, let's say if you're a poet, and then to look for a book publisher. Foundations, fellowships, uh, I would say research the fellowships that are available. Look in your state, if the state of Maryland, let's say, or some other state, every state, wherever you're living, has fellowships for artists, for writers. Um, Look at the foundations, yes. Um, but the most important thing is to write and to read and to hone your work and to get it published, if it's poetry or in magazines, until you can find a publisher who will take on the risk and the joy of publishing your work as a book. Yeah. And once you have a book published, uh, it becomes easier to find fellowships and support. As an unpublished poet, there are places you can try. It's a question of how much time you devote to researching the options. and sending your work in, following the guidelines. Often these organizations use a service called Submittable to submit your work. Sometimes it's free of charge, sometimes you have to pay to participate in some of these. It's a question of what your means are and how, but I would encourage, the most important thing above all is to develop a daily, I would say, a practice of reading, not necessarily writing every day, but why not? There's no harm in it. I do more or less write every day, and I think it's a good discipline. Uh, for every
Oh,
100 poems you write, you might have 70 you keep, or you might have 30 you keep. But if you don't write those 100, you may never find those 30 to keep. You see, so uh, I would encourage more than less. And
so
editing and revising is very important. Write the poem, share it, get opinions, and then hone and produce a second draft or a third draft, and then send it out. Yeah,
so you write also English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and also Haitian Crow.
right.
Just how is that language important when you are writing poetry, and also how were you able to make the balance when you are writing in Spanish and then translate it to French? How can you multitask also the writing in different languages? So
Well,
currently you have a
right.
published book in 3 languages.
That's right. I published in French and Spanish and in English, um,
Mm.
and soon and in Creole as well, actually. So 4 languages. But uh, I like to say that when I'm tired in one language, I might be just waking up in another. So I constantly go back and forth. It's a game I play internally with the languages I know, of keeping them in shape. It's an exercise. It's just like running. Runners don't just run; they have to practice every day running and preparing. So in the same way, I have to practice my languages. Right now, I'm stronger in French and Spanish, and in English, but and weaker in Haitian Creole and Portuguese. Why? Because I have not been writing in those languages lately. So I need to come back reading and writing in those languages to and make it. And it's not easy, but it's a wonderful, thrilling experience of having different languages to turn to express essentially the same things. One's needs, one's desires, one's loves, one's despairs, one's ideas about the world, about politics, about the climate, about the environment, and so on. Whatever the motivation for the poem, it is a rich experience to have a choice of languages in which to write the expression. Yeah. Um, so
Wondering
that's my
early early in your first book, The Elephant of Rocking
reckoning. Yes.
Killing, okay, and then also just you have also won the fellowship from the Foundation for Contemporary Art. I just want to know the difference between your early writing. Has it has the like the dimensions of politics, people, and also culture? How does it different from writing your first book and then up to the book that you have published in 2020, 10,000 Step Against the Tyrant?
Right. This one right here. This is the new book, 10,000 Steps Against a Tyrant. And I'm very, very proud of it. And in a sense, it's a book of political love poems. It was
Uh-huh.
written in 2020 during the campaign against the domestic tyrant, Donald, the orange-haired fellow. And it was written also during the pandemic. So the pandemic, which continues, so there was the mother of elections and the mother of pandemics, and these were influences in this book.
So also how does
But
how like the
how the first book, sorry, was different from. I mean, there's an evolution, and you stay the same. You're a lyric poet at the beginning of your life. You're a lyric poet at the end of your life. I mean, I would call myself, people have said I'm a lyric poet. I'm also a poet in free verse, which means that invent my verse forms each time I write. I don't stick to a particular pattern. Though recently I've been sticking to a pattern in the sense that I've been writing 14-line poems,
But
lots of them.
has that leadership personality show up in your first writing? Do you feel that it was showing up in your first book or
Well,
just
inevitably,
in
one's
2020?
first writing, there's a certain innocence and a certain joy. It's the first time you're seeing the world, and you first time you're expressing yourself in words in response to the world. And so that freshness of that first look, you hope you'll never lose. But inevitably, as I've written and published 22 books in my career so far, and so inevitably, each one is a baby, each one is a child that I love, but each one is different, and there's a certain honing of the craft. So maybe my craft is is less raw now than it was when I published my first book. But there's a word music in the first book, a lyricism that is perhaps not in some of the other work since it but you know, I it's very hard to know how one's voice when when you discover your voice as a poet, it's your voice, but you deepen it, you broaden it, you add layers to it, you know. So that's what I think I've been doing as a poet since my first book,
Hmm.
constantly
So
working. Yeah.
in 2020, also you have produced a record by you published three books in three languages. First the migrant state, and then sur la nostalgie,
Solely
uh,
nostalgic. Yeah.
nostalgie. Lorica et tempo. Just I'm just worrying because now you have published 22 books, and you're still going on writing poets. What give you that inspiration to continue writing and also publish more books?
Well, sometimes the inspiration is just dealing with the solitude, you know, and dealing with the sadness of exile, the sadness of migration also. And how do I deal with it? In my particular case, I write poems. I write from it and I about it. And I'm liberated from these chains by releasing them, writing, you know. And so I keep going. I also want to write beautiful poems if I can. I want to write poems that speak to people, that move people who read them. So I keep wanting to write in search of that elusive, perfect poem, whatever that poem is. You know, there is no such thing, but yet you keep writing, trying to reach there, achieve that. And I have stories to tell, lots of stories to tell from migration, from exile, from the war, the uncivil war, I call it, in Sri Lanka, from other places, the war going on now, and the invasion of Ukraine. These are all subjects for writing and reflection about human beings. My story is human life. My subject is human life, but it's also animal life of all sorts. It's also insect life. It's also plant life. It's life and death, you know. And there's this dichotomy between life and death, and this inevitability of death, of dying, passing on, and writing uh, as a way uh, of uh, of capturing this music that's moving on. You know, there's a beautiful line in the poet Cavafy about the music of the Alexandria that you're losing. You know, and he captures that in a beautiful poem. And so I try to capture that music of my own Alexandria that I'm losing.
One of your poem you talk about Paris. What's going on? What's wrong in Paris? I just want you to read for us if it's possible. One of your
One of
poems.
my poems,
Read
with
from it.
pleasure. I'll
Okay.
read from the new book, 10,000 Steps Against a Tyrant, which is published by Broadstone Books. Um, I can read a couple of poems, short poems. The Right Path. Let us roll, America. Let us not look back. Let us seize the fellow by the absent coat tail. Let us reveal the traipsing emperor nude, and let us remember and defend the rights of our virus dead. But let us do so with respect, with love. Why? Because Jesus says so. Why? Because we're not jackals and hyenas. Why? Because we have to get back on the road to the promised land. And was one more short one, the torch. Torch. The flame may seem fragile, small, almost nothing at all, but as you carry it from room to room in the dark, the bobbing, flickering wick lights up mind and heart and gives hope. And the sun is waiting around the corner of morning to come on stage, to rise. Two poems from 10,000 Steps Against the Tyrant.
Thank you so much, Andren. We have enjoyed that. I just want to know how people can find your work and also your books and how they can follow it, please.
Sure. People can find some of my work places like Amazon or in bookstores. If you're in Washington, you could go to Politics and Prose, and I think a couple of my books are available there in the main store. Um, you can contact Broadstone Books online, and this latest book is on sale there for a generous discount if you're interested. Broadstonebooks.com. 10,000 Steps Against the Tyrant. If you're looking for a special lost books or rare books of mine, you could even write to me, and I could make some arrangement out. My email, if you like, is indranmx@gmail.com. indranmx@gmail.com. Hopefully, you'll find some of my books in bookstores or in Amazon or write to me. Yeah, and
Thank you so
and
much,
Broadstone, I
Andren.
would
But
say.
before you go, I want us to share with us what is next in your journey. What will be doing? What you will be
Next in
doing
my
in the
journey, one thing I hope I'll be doing is writing and poems and sharing them and translating poems as well from different languages into English usually. Um, Editing books. I've become a publisher of poetry with the poet Sarah Cahill Marin. We're called Beltway Editions. You can find us at beltwayeditions.com. And we're publishing a first book, an anthology by 6 young Muslim poets who met together at MIT and wrote poetry together. And it's a wonderful book called Our Ancestors Did Not Breathe This Air. So you can look for that if you're interested in that book. It's really a unique book with poems and paintings and photographs. And um, Our Ancestors Did Not Breathe This Air. Just look for beltwayeditions.com, BELTWAY editions, all one word.com, to learn about our publishing venture. And I'm editing the magazine Beltway Poetry Quarterly, along with 2 other poets, and we are we publish contemporary poetry and translations and reviews. So I'll be doing those things: publishing books, publishing poems. I'll be writing poems, I hope, editing them, and going on into the good night, poetically and lyrically.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andren Amir Tahajim. Hopefully, yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Would
you.
like to see you more and talk more about poetry and writing, and also how we can engage more with writers.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Have a good
Wonderful
day. Thank you
this
so much.
chance. Thank you.
It
All
was
the
an
best.
honor to be with talk
No,
to you. Bye.
my honor is mine.
Thank you
Pleasure.
for coming to the Four Direction. Bye. Have a good day. Okay, thank you so much for watching. The show of today for Four Direction is talking about poetry and writing. I was joined by Indran Amirthanayagam. He's a poet and also a diplomat and award winner, international award winner for poems. See you in a different episode, different topic. I had the honor to be your host today. My name is Mary Apollo. Follow the four direction and send us your suggestions, your comment on the section below. Thank you so much. Bye. Have a good day.